So kia ora, welcome to this keynote panel. Called Nick Jones Takuingwa. I'm Nick Jones, the director of Nessie. Some of you may not recognise me with a beard. Some of you haven't recognised me with a beard. So that's who I am. The voice may be more familiar. Look, this panel is going to be very interesting. It's about translating advanced technologies into impact. And I'm joined by some wonderful panellists. You've got to know some of them already. So we have Jeanette Hamilton-Pierce, and wonderful keynote opening for us, Jeanette. Ngā mihi nui. We have Amanda Barnard. Again, a wonderful keynote opening for us as well. And welcome to you. We've just heard from Giuseppe Barker, and I couldn't have asked for a better setup for this panel. I think Giuseppe covered every single technology that was sort of logical to be talking about right now. So I think that was wonderful, and as my colleague and friend Richard said, it was a talk that we could all understand, all the way from Wolfgang and Alex to sort of mere plebs like me. So I really appreciate the effort you've put in there to try and translate that to a wide audience, Giuseppe. We have Dr. Kari Jordan. So kia ora, welcome. We're going to hear from you tomorrow. And also you were part of the Carpentry Connect meeting on Monday. So I'm glad there was a whole conference for you to come to rather than just the one day. And it's really wonderful to have you here. And Rick Stevens may show up, I'm not sure. So he's our keynote from tomorrow. I suspect he might be getting over jet lag somewhere from Argonne National Lab. So if Rick swans in, no doubt he will be able to thread himself into the conversation, the kōrero, at some point. So let me set the scene, just a few brief comments that have been given to the panel members already. Knowledge of our world and our curiosity for discovery are at the core of how we understand our pasts, presents and futures. Over the course of the last half-century, vast domains of knowledge have immigrated into digital realms. How we continue to govern over, translate and discover existing and new knowledge is recognised as a prominent characteristic of different cultures, societies, with Western science and Matauranga Māori being two prominent examples. The last couple of years have seen a radical shift. Advanced technologies, and especially AI models, are leaping relentlessly, attaining new levels of mastery and disrupting a growing range of communities and applications. In many cases, these changes are operating beyond our imaginations, characterised by the emergence of a vast array of new skills, tools and opportunities. With other disruptive technologies, such as quantum computation just over the horizon, these and other advanced technologies are set to disrupt and then underpin how we know, relate and translate into the future. In the context of our national science, technology and innovation systems, we see the increasing role for advanced digital or perhaps computational practices and capabilities to grasp the opportunities on offer. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have the most major reshaping of our national science system since its current shape was cast, starting in 1990. Alongside major challenges to the structure of the science system, we're also seeing investment priorities shift into translating impact across most investments. The role of fundamental or blue skies science and research is still key, while the emphasis has shifted onto the potential for translational impact from science to underpin economic growth. Today we have a panel of experts who each carry a range of experience and knowledge across the landscape we're surveying. We'll now look to our wise colleagues for their perspectives. We'll seek their views on the essential and critical things we should consider as we navigate this increasingly unknown landscape. Okay, scene. So I'm not asking all of you to say something about each question, but if you feel you've got something to say, just please raise your hand and we'll make sure you've got a mic. I'm not sure we've got quite enough mics. We will come to the audience at the end. So let's see how we go. So the first question, where are we starting from? What sort of shape is the research landscape in today? Or put another way, what have we learnt before and how well prepared are we to adapt and harness the opportunities ahead? Who wants to kick us off? Just talk? Should be on.
Thank you. As I commented on earlier, in terms of the research landscape, obviously there are some major technologies which have come into play. The main one which has an impact on pretty much all areas, I would say. I cannot think any area pretty much where AI doesn't have an impact. And obviously there needs to be some adaptation in terms of adopting this technology and how to adopt it, how to train the people to use it. Government organizations have significantly higher latencies in adoption, obviously, and so there's going to be a big challenge. But it is a big challenge in general also for industry, because these technologies are moving so fast that it becomes very difficult to remain competitive. We are observing these with QDX, for example. I think Amanda has touched upon yesterday on this as well. You might have models that work and that maybe that give you an edge on some technological task, but they may be outdated in a few days. And you're competing with big institutions, big companies such as Microsoft, Google, etc. And remaining competitive is very difficult. So for people who are actually trying to push new AI technology, it's an incredibly competitive world. For all the remaining people, they will need to adapt to use AI. It's to some extent is use AI or perish, because many tasks will be so much more efficient by using AI. They will need to be adopted. Then besides that, there are other technologies such as high-performance computing and quantum technologies as well. And I don't want to talk too long about those. I think AI here is the main one. And so how you push the translation in terms of how you push the translation from research to industry, there's also a big change. We have seen last year a Nobel Prize in chemistry given to DeepMind. That is a big sign that universities, research in universities is probably not doing as good as a job as they should. There is a big push on the cutting edge of technology of being produced in industry, and that applies also to research. At the moment is mainly, say, in AI. The same applies, for example, to drug discovery, in high-performance computing. So I think we will need to change the way we think about translational research and how the infrastructure in the universities can support that. Because at the moment, we are definitely not prepared. We are not prepared in Australia, at least. I'm talking about Australia at the moment, what I suspect is similar to here in New Zealand.
Kia ora, great. I think we'll do questions at the end, Alex, if that's all right. Anyone else from the panel?
I can go next.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I can go next. I'm really, really grateful that Giuseppe gave that research landscape as it is, and that most of you will have, really good ideas of what that is. When it comes to Indigenous research, though, the word research is a dirty word. It's a word that puts us as Indigenous peoples on the lower scale of every part of the research that happens on this land. Because the most important thing about the research, when you bring it down to a point of what it is about that we're not here to exist, we are not here to be landowners, we're not here to be important, because we're not supposed to be existing here. Who says all that in many terms? I said it yesterday. Linda Tuhiwai-Smith actually wrote this book in 1999 about research being a dirty word. where are we starting? We're starting on different platforms here when it comes to research. We're not at the same platform. We're not even where Giuseppe is in terms of Indigenous research here. We're not coming to the same aspirations about research, iwi research that is. It's really important to know that these two worlds are poles apart from each other. I have to bring that up as being the most important part of it, because where I'm at as an Indigenous Māori woman that sits here today is that this research world that I got into, it found me. I didn't find it, it found me. Is that I had to make sure that the research I was doing was for my mokopuna that came up after me. It's generational. Everything's generational that I do. So when you talk about research and the research landscape, you have to understand is that we were researched on. When you talk about blue sky research is called rangituhaha. It's research in the blue sky of Ranginui. We were not looked at. We were not even talked about. We were not even asked if research was important to us. We were looked on. Researchers up here, we were looked under a microscope to sort of tell us who we are. We were looked at on. We were looked with, and then the research went away. We were not partners in this whole research landscape. So when you come to talk about the technologies, and I love technology, I love everything about technology, I love everything about AI, I love everything about quantum computing, because I know that it's there to help human beings be worthy, human beings be existing. So when it comes to the technology, when it comes to making sure that we're involved, we have to be at the table. Iwi-led research has to be at the table. Iwi-led data governance has to be at the table. We can't be under the table, we can't be looked at, we can't be not talked about. We're talked about, and then we are in control of our narrative. The narrative that comes out of science research, the narrative that comes out of everybody's research does one thing. We are the worst health statistics, we are the worst in prisons, we are the worst in education. It all comes down to how we are as unworthy. But your research, I've heard your research and how wonderful your research is and how much it does for people all over the world, yet the same narrative keeps coming out of the research, that we are not existing here. We don't own land. We don't own homes. We're not healthy. So I know research, when I hear it, that it's on one side over here of the landscape saying that we're unworthy, and then we've got iwi-led research, mana wahine research on this side saying we exist and we are here. Where do we start? Decolonising methodologies. Linda Tuhiwai-Smith wrote this in 1999. If you haven't read it, please understand that this is where a lot of researchers in Aotearoa has to start. Decolonising methodologies, understanding theoretically where you are with research, every single one of you. Because really, we're here together so that we can do this together. Not about us, not with us and then go, not on us, not under a microscope, and not even talking to us. I know those methodologies exist because I was part of those questions. Everybody has a problem that needs to have the technology that's going to take care of it, but that technology is always leading to one narrative. We need to change the narrative about iwi and Māori in this country specifically. So that's where I think we need to start.
Kia kaha.
Kia ora.
Ngā mihi. Ngā mihi kia koe. Oh, personal coffee deliveries to the panel. This is wonderful. Does anyone else have... Yep. Amanda's got a mic. Do you want to add anything?
Could you repeat the question again? I was just absorbed in hearing about the challenges. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, it's. We're talking to where we're starting from, right? And so I think the question is really what have we learnt looking back, and how well prepared are we? And we're hearing the huge disparities in those positionalities. And
there are, and you've got a new playbook. The new science reform document has come out. I encourage you all to read it. It gives a very, in some ways, dim picture of where we're coming from. A bit of a dim picture.
A dim picture of
where things have come from. But a lot of lessons learned and a lot of opportunity for reform. So we're coming up now in New Zealand on a once-in-a-generational opportunity to make a change, to overcome some of the impediments to the Indigenous population, to overcome some of the impediments to access to resources and the democratisation of AI. We're ensuring AI doesn't become another technology for the rich, out of the reach of other parts of our society, and a new way to engage with industry, where, as Giuseppe's mentioned, is where a lot of the innovations in AI, both in generating new methods in AI and applying AI, are being led. It's a time to be courageous, it's a time to be brave and ambitious. Because in the absence of any guidance, every answer is the right answer. And I really wish I in Australia was in a lucky position where New Zealand is about to be over the coming year. Back to Nick, or over to Carpentries.
I think the only thing I would add is that bravery and ambition and even competition does not mean collaboration isn't possible. And so without digging into my keynote tomorrow, and I hope you all will attend, we can accomplish bravery, we can compete with other nations, but it takes collaboration.
Kia ora. Thank you, Kari. So let's just have a quick look at my next question. Many of us are facing these challenges and seeking to position ourselves to operate, to excel, to succeed. We've been encouraged to be ambitious under these emerging conditions. So what do you think are the essential elements? What's essential in our sectors, our communities, our institutions, our teams? What are we going to have to pay attention to given the changes we're facing? Who wants to lead off on that one?
Yeah, essential elements or characteristics?
Characteristics.
Yeah.
So take it anywhere you like.
Essentially, partnership. We've been talking about collaboration and partnership, and I started off going like this in terms of understanding whose research questions are really important problems to start solving. So partnerships, I talked about it yesterday in terms of Te Roroa, Victoria University and Fern Donovan and her master's thesis. Those partnerships were so key in actually getting their research, her master's thesis through the university, through the iwi and through sciences, in order for that label to actually come onto her thesis. That didn't take very long. So if you're wanting to look at having partnerships with iwi in all your research that you're doing, those master's theses that are coming up and PhDs that are coming up now, the characteristic that's really, really important is collaboration and partnerships. And I really want to really hone in that it's possible if you're brave, that it's possible that you're ambitious about that it's possible that we keep talking about how these partnerships can happen now, because we are on this continuum now, right now, this important time that we're in, to actually start making those partnerships very, very key. From the beginning of your research, at the research question that you start to ask, those partnerships are already to be formed there, not as an afterthought, but right at the beginning. Yeah, it's true partnership, not consultation partnership. We're going to consult with you, Māori, and iwi, and then we're going to make our decision after that. I'm talking about true partnership here and collaboration when it comes to actually doing those questions and really getting to that iwi aspirations that is needed to come at the end by that. Kia ora.
I want to dig into that a little bit more, because initially you mentioned those partnerships that you referenced didn't take that long. But actually, they do take long. It may take a while to build a relationship with a community that you have never interacted with before, you don't know much about. Speaking as a project director, we get many requests for partnerships, but we normally get them the day before the funding request is due, and it's like, oh. Here's a form, just slide your name into this pre-filled application and let us know how we can partner with you. That is not building a relationship. And I will reject any of you if you send me an email with that, just so you know. So partnerships take time, relationship building takes time. It takes time to build trust, especially with, I'll speak for myself. I'm a woman of color. You're not going to build a partnership with me that's fake. I can see right through you.
I mean, building on this idea of the partnerships and collaboration, I think a fundamental element of feature of that we need to pay attention to is to trying to promote multidisciplinary knowledge. This has become very important not just in research, but for any successful business and companies. You need to have the talent that has knowledge across different areas. I mean, it's just, for example, if we think about AI, it's like the same thing as when the computers were introduced first. Initially, they were for mathematicians, for very specialized people, and then they became used by everybody. And that's exactly what is going to happen with AI, right? And maybe there will be also some quantum technologies that are applied that way as well. So we need to know sufficiently about these technologies, and then we need to know how to apply them to different domains to bridge the gap between the computer science of it and the application. And that's how, in the end, you enable some technologies which will be very successful. So that's one component of it. The other is to be actually more agile. You cannot be successful in a world that moves very quickly if your latency is too high. And this is a very important feature. Obviously, again, I repeat that governments typically have very high latencies, etc. But in the end, if we want to be successful in the application and in design on novel technologies and novel science, we need to be more agile. We need to respond more quickly to the changes.
I just want to hop on that too. Agile and the capacity. That is really, really important when it comes to looking at being agile and capacity building for iwi researchers to really look at the investment of training and courses that pathways for iwi researchers to come into AI, to come into quantum computing and to come into data science. That capacity building and agile thinking is really what's needing as characteristics to start the implementation of all of that. Once we start to look at the training and capacity and the investment in there, from an iwi perspective also to bring that in, my gosh, there are so many ways we can start to look at the problems in solving with the research. I really just wanted to touch on that too.
Amanda?
All right, we're entering an age of austerity pretty much everywhere. Leveraging your partnerships, as we've heard, is going to be really important. So your value is what you know, not what you do. Working with industry don't want to fund projects. They want access to capability. So think carefully about your unique value proposition in terms of building a relationship. A partnership is about us all bringing something to the table, not all being able to do the same thing. So think carefully about what you know and who you are, and less about what you do in building relationships across borders, across organisations, and work together. New Zealand needs to hunt as a pack. You're not in competition with each other. You work together, you'll be able to engage in things like the new Horizon Europe project, which New Zealand is now part of Europe, apparently. Congratulations. Big opportunity. But most of the funded Horizon Europe projects at the moment from New Zealand are single organisation partnerships with a large number of European entities. Working together, you can get a much bigger piece of the pie. So I recommend banding together and then building those big cross-border relationships to overcome some of that austerity I think we're all going to have to endure over the coming years.
Kia ora, thanks, Amanda. I'm waiting, Giuseppe, for precision to join your latency comment. Let's see if we can get there by the end of the talk. So actually, you've all gone into sort of my next question, which was, do you see opportunities for fuller collaboration, and in particular, are there certain areas of challenge or need? Is there anything in amongst all of that that's maybe a little bit weirder, a little bit more niche, a little bit more particular to your own areas of expertise, where you think there's a real sort of visibility gap? Anything come to mind, anyone?
I think for our community and like-minded open source projects, I'm seeing almost an abandonment, like abandoning fundamental skills because of some of the points that my colleagues brought up, the need to be agile, the need to advance digital infrastructure. And even in the funding landscape, there's sort of a shift away from fundamentals. Before we get to all of these beautiful things that we can do with artificial intelligence and machine learning, et cetera, we need to understand the fundamentals. And so that's something that I'm sort of continuing to advocate for while working to advance these technologies and being a part of these conversations and collaborations, but we can't abandon the fundamentals.
I really like that. I really like that in terms of collaborations. Yes, let's collaborate as much as possible in terms of every opportunity that's out there. But you're talking about the challenges. The challenges really comes to for eResearch anyway, is looking at institutional policies, resistance to iwi-led approaches, and that's a fundamentals that we've got to start looking at. And then once you look at those fundamentals, what comes after that is the funding gaps. The funding gaps for iwi initiatives, really, there's always funding for mainstream projects, but there's never really any funding for iwi projects. So there is a challenge to where that funding goes to, how funding is allocated, what projects are important to be funded, and it's not about, and Amanda's putting this, it's not about actually being competitive with that, it's working together in those collaborations to actually come out with the most important outcomes that everybody wants in science and technology and in iwi research. So there is a lack of iwi representation when it comes to being on any of these participation and collaborations. Lack of, but really it's starting to just go back to the fundamentals and the fundamentals of who should be at the table to start having these collaborations, who should be at the table to start being a decision maker about what kind of problems we're starting to do with research. Fundamentals is really clear. And fundamentals, if we're going to do the Fs, fundamentals, funding, and fun. Let's have fun. Let's have fun doing this too together. Absolutely.
Kia ora. Amanda? Anyone else?
Unusual things that I've read. Okay, well, first off, my observation is it's finally great to be the coolest person in the room. eResearch and AI has really brought us all to the table in ways that we haven't been before. We should take great advantage of that. But a lot of things that are happening out there are distractions. There's a lot of distraction AI. A lot of big hype about things that add very little value. So that means that what we're doing is even more important. What I'm seeing at the cutting edge, at the bleeding edge of AI, is less big models doing big things and more specialist AI and AI for AI. So where industry is moving now is less around big splashy things and more about teaming of AIs working together, the way we have been working together for generations. So we actually have a whole new dimension to add to the conversation, and that's something to pay more attention to as well and not be distracted by the big shiny objects.
Okay, thank you. So now we're into the home stretch. So for those involved in national or local sort of supportive research, because we're sort of talking in the sort of eResearch context, we've got the full range of researchers, administrators, policy people, eResearchers, technologists. Given these changes and given the context of disruption through advanced technologies, what are the things we as eResearch practitioners need to further develop to enable researcher success and impact? How can we help?
I would say researchers don't have time to learn, and it's sort of weird to say that because we're researchers, so we're supposed to always be learning. But if there is a concerted effort to build curricula, preferably open source, where a researcher can self-pace through continuing to advance their knowledge in some sort of self-paced way, I think that would be really helpful, because it would speak to some of the points that Giuseppe made about technology just advancing so quickly. There may need to be collaboration with industry and things like that, but I think researchers don't have time to also learn. And so how can you ever get ahead if you're always behind? And it sounds kind of weird saying it, but researchers need time to learn. So having those resources that they can use on their own, self-paced through. I encourage everyone never to work on things on their own. You know, if there's a collaborator or a partner that you can self-pace through continuing your knowledge, I think that's super important.
To ensure researcher success in the age of rapid technology, it is important to have really good supervision. And I'm talking about masters and PhDs researchers at that level when they're coming out of undergraduate to graduate. At that point of going into graduate level, it's really important to have really good supervision of those students in order to start looking at the fundamentals of where their research is going to. So in this lens and on this lens, and I know it's high heat at the moment, but the tiriti o Waitangi is really important to embed in terms of looking at researchers being successful on these lands. And really looking at digital research infrastructures that starts to embed what tiriti o Waitangi is starting to put forward as national digital research. As rapid technology happens, tiriti o Waitangi is a really important way of reinforcing iwi rights and over data and knowledge. So that's for this land. And in some ways, there are, and I was talking to them yesterday, and I don't know if they're here, iwi tools starting to be developed in terms of data centres, having control of our data in data centres and in technology. That's starting to come through now, and I was talking about this about 3 or 4 years ago, but we didn't seem to have any kind of technology solutions to that. When it comes to data sovereignty in most points, data sovereignty is always seen that who owns the technology owns the data. Now we're starting to sort of say that as researchers coming into this, if the technology is on iwi land, is iwi controlled, we start developing that technology. So we're looking at researchers totally looking differently from a Te Reti o Waitanga perspective, making sure that we have control of our data, control of where our data is stored, so that researchers can start to take a narrative of that. So looking at funding and facilitating data repositories, advanced technologies that are controlled by iwi, I think is what I'm trying to get to the end of this and say that we're looking at researchers. And so that needs to go at that master's and PhD level on the research questions that help us to start getting into this rapid technology, no matter what the technology is, to start really working from that point.
Yeah, that should be helpful. Yep.
I mean, following up on this, I guess we touched upon the importance of training, and so providing sufficient training, providing the infrastructure for training, etc. These are very important. On top of that, I will not treat software as infrastructure. This is something that it's not usually done. You know, when you talk about software engineers being involved in the maintenance of codes for big computing centers and infrastructure, it's very difficult to find funding for that. And I think this needs a fundamental change. It has already happened in the US, for example, where you have all the national centers that employ people to maintain their code. A big supercomputer, and in general a data center, it's not useful if you don't have people who are able to maintain the code that can exploit that infrastructure. Now that code has become more important as well because of the role that digital innovation is playing in science and technology. So it will have more and more importance, and it needs to be treated as infrastructure. On top of that, because you have that infrastructure and because you maintain the code and because you build the code and you keep it, invest in higher risk, high reward projects. That's something that organizations at the government level can afford to do. And by having the infrastructure and collaborating with the right people, that's something that can be enabled. And that goes back also, you know, first circle to what also Amanda was saying, the focus. Focus on some projects where there is the expertise and there is unique capabilities, and you bring the infrastructure and collaborate with people that can bring that added value to obtain something which is unique.
There's nothing left to say now, is there? Everyone's taken all the good stuff, except to say that the most important things in our ecosystem are not sitting back in the labs, they're sitting right here in this room. We're not going to be replaced by machines. We are the brightest, we are the best. And what do you need to make researchers successfully support each other?
I just want to add on what Giuseppe is kind of sort of saying. Training and upskilling iwi researchers in digital technology is really offering that specialised in training in AI and data science, is really equipping iwi researchers with the tools to lead in this space, I want my grandchildren to lead in this space. That's why I'm here today. And I will start to see a lot of my grandchildren and come to these conferences as e rangahau, Aotearoa, in the future. And that's what I see. That was my vision. That vision just came up when I just saw my granddaughter sitting in here. So yes, I need them to help be equipped as iwi researchers in these tools. And I'm really, really optimistic on how much that's going to happen in the next few years. Kia ora.
Māori ora. I would love to see your moko in here. It's wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to make it very personal about each of you. So are you ready? So if there's one thing that you personally would like to join up with others to tackle, okay, so not too personal, it's on the professional end of personal, maybe, it's up to you. This is your moment to make your pitch. What specifically would you like to be involved in, and what help do you need to achieve your goals?
Well, I have already given a pretty clear picture of what I would like to do. So if you want to help me, I cannot do it alone. Help me.
I, on behalf of the Carpentries, would like, speaking to your point about ensuring eResearchers not only have access but lead the charge. We have the training, but we don't necessarily have access to the communities or know how to contact them, and so I think those introductions would be very helpful.
We need you too. I think I've been very personal here as we're going on. I need you, I need you, I need you, I need all of you. And yes, I have the communities. Let's do this together. And that's what I'm here to do too, is for us to lead, for us to design what we need in our aspirations to still say that we still are here. So I think I've been very personal about that. Iwi leadership, my moko sitting here and on these chairs. For the future, and really it's making sure then along the way that we get the funding to help with that. So I would like to sort of look at how iwi and Indigenous data sovereignty really opens up for our whānau. AI tech experts like yourselves are here, like Coventry, you're here. We can't do this all on our own. We do need you all here with your fabulous expertise to say that we are still here. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
And from the board level, I guess, I look forward to representing the needs of researchers and the sector in the upcoming reforms to the system. The last time the system in New Zealand was reformed was 30 years ago, so we're looking at a once-in-a-generational change here. Open to suggestions, anything you need, feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to make sure that your needs are met.
Just make sure it's well in advance of the funding application.
Well in advance of the funding application.
Okay, wonderful. Just join me in thanking the panel before we come to your questions. Okay, how many, I know we were running late to start. How much time have we got, George? Okay. Do a few questions? So do a few questions? Yeah, we're just going to eat into morning tea a little bit. So let's see, who's got a pressing question that they would like to present to the panel? Alex.
Well, thanks for discussing, the disruptive nature of AI and how we can help different communities improve the life of people. I think it's obviously very important to remind ourselves that the beneficiaries are humans, and that's important. Reflecting back, because I'm sort of towards the end of my career. I mean, I'm an old guy, and I've seen sometimes, these disruptions coming up. And we had the web in the 1990s. We had the invention of the processor in the 1970s and the transistors and so forth. And each one of these inventions caused a change in the way we work. And some of these changes led to a reorientation of the workforce towards adopting this new technology. For instance, with the invention of the processor, people had to learn how to program, for instance. And that was a new skill that didn't exist before. With the web, I feel like we didn't have to learn very much. I mean, we could just leverage the technology, just connect to the web and let companies like Google search the web for us and find the information we needed. And so my question would be in terms of AI, do you think that it's going to be a bit more like the invention of the processor, where the skill set will have to be changed completely, or maybe added or extended? Or do you think it might be more like the web?
Great question. So who wants to lead off?
Well, I do want to say I challenge that a little bit because there's still some bias in the algorithms and the way that the web and some of these technologies are designed. So there's still, even though it's a little bit easier, if you've been working in technology, when new technologies are developed, it's a little bit easier to get onboarded to them. There's still the fact that nobody in this room, of course, but outside of this room, there are things being developed with some bias. So we should acknowledge that too.
I totally agree. I do like the chronological order that you put the technologies, that they've been there. But the technologies that we have are not neutral, are biased, and have that bias go right through them. Indigenous communities know what that bias is all about. I talked about it a lot yesterday in terms of what the bias is already there. So reality is the uneven playing field of those biases gets everybody into a position by which they are fundamentally walking off from. When it comes to eResearch, those fundamentals aren't there yet. We don't even have a platform to stand off of. We just need to know that that platform is not the same as your platform. Those biases are there, and those it's not neutral. The technology is not neutral. Whether that goes into what the web is at the moment, what AI is at the moment, those biases are still there. And it's really important just to know that today.
Thanks. And in terms of, let's say, if it is the processor or the web, so a technology that requires a fundamental change in the way you train people, or it's easier to pick up, it's highly dependent on the application area, right? So if you think about cybersecurity or drug discovery or customer service, it's a fundamental change. Those sectors are being changed in a way that you need to change the skill set of the people within your organization to be successful in a way that they are able to embrace AI. So it's a fundamental change. As well as software engineering, for example. Again, a fundamental change. If we are thinking about the way we gather information, ChatGPT, etc., they're super easy to use. And again, it's more of a web-like technology that's being introduced and is also designed for people to be able to adopt it in an easier way. So I believe there will be a number of different sectors which will be changed at their fundament. They will require different skill set, and some other sectors where they will adopt it, but it will be milder as an impact.
Okay, I would say every given year I probably look at around $500 million worth of funding applications, assessing people's track records and a lot of CVs for jobs. And we look at assessing researcher in terms of two things, capability and confidence. What is their capability and how much confidence do we have in them to be able to pull it off? With the addition of new AI technologies, the way we assess capability has changed. There is a baseline there now that anybody can access. And that means the way to differentiate yourself and the way to be successful is to increase our confidence in you. Leveled up in terms of capability, that's shifted. Confidence now is that lever that you can pull to be successful.
So how do you, just to dig into that a little bit, Amanda, how do you assess confidence? Because we heard some encouragement to think critically, for example,
right.
about technology. We've heard other thoughts about the the knowledge of whether your application area is going to be massively or lesser so affected? What's the confidence piece?
We need to see creativity, and that where it comes back to ambition. But with being really creative and really ambitious comes risk. We need to be honest about that risk, not avoid it, but manage it and demonstrate that you have managed risk in the past, because when you're looking at funding applications, you're not making a science decision, you're making an investment decision. And more, we're not investing in the work, we're investing in you. And that's where that confidence comes in. Show that the money is safe in your hands.
Brilliant, thank you. Anyone else got a question? Lord Max, here we are.
With this type of technology, particularly the types of computational resources that are required that a number of our keynotes have spoken about in the last 2 days, ties very strongly to any particular institution's capability to attract energy and use energy. What's the panel's consideration and opinion on the way ahead, considering what Giuseppe talked about today, while very large, is quite niche? And if it were to open up into something that Richard talked about with surface chemistry, you could see exponential growth in energy requirements that could lead to more competition instead of more inclusive environments. What does the panel think of that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess from the energy matter is incredibly important. So there has been a big shift in computing to trying to reduce the amount of power usage, right? GPUs are all about that. And so we have way less power-intensive workloads when we use GPU computing. Nonetheless, obviously, operating a machine like Frontier, as I've heard the comment earlier, will probably make a meteorological change somewhere in the world if you use it at scale for a bit of time. We are moving towards more domain-specific processors. GPU is the first stage. So the idea is that CPUs were using too much power for technical reasons, and we have redesigned our processors to be able to absorb some specific workloads in a more power-efficient way. Now, that's only the first stage. GPUs will be there for a certain amount of time. There will be a next stage where we will have to find novel architectures that can be applied to a variety of different problems, or maybe a set of different architectures, each one mapping to a different problem, so that we can save more energy in these applications. So that's what the future looks like in terms of computing. Obviously, there's still an open question of how much that costs in terms of energy. The investment needs to be there. And you have to offset that with the impact and outcomes of the applications that you do on these computer systems. That's the key. That's the main justification for big supercomputing centers to exist. Orthogonally, obviously, there is the AI problem, but that's being handled completely privately. You know, I'm not sure how many organizations in the world can afford to train, I don't know, a 7 billion parameter AI model. I think the cost these days is of the order of 100 million. So that's a private investment. They purchase that energy, and they do the use that they do with that. But for public money, I think you need a sound justification for using these resources with high impact projects and outcomes.
Okay, I'm just very conscious of time. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add to that?
I'll add two things. So one of the things my lab, in collaboration with Haibozang from University of Otago, is we're developing a photonic computer, which is now, we've got a prototype which is 350 times more energy efficient than an A100 GPU and 330 times faster. So new computing paradigms are going to be really interesting. That one uses light instead of electrons, which makes it energy efficient and faster. So that's one thing to think about. Another thing is, if we've used all the data we have to train a really accurate model, do we really need the data anymore? Most of the energy goes into storing things for later. Data centres cost a lot to run, and they're running all the time, even if the supercomputer's turned off. So if you can reproduce the data, you're better off reproducing it than storing it. And imagine how much energy the planet would save if, now that we've got Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and DeepSeek, what if we deleted the internet? Think about that for a moment. If all of that information is contained in a new type of platform for us to access that information faster, why do we need all the internet? Which is mostly advertising anyway. So, thinking about the energy problem needs us to think more critically about the information we're generating, the information we're storing, and whether we really need to keep it now that we've moved on, let's face it, to something else.
Kia ora, thanks Amanda. And I know you're channeling Rick's introduction to you when an email from 2019 was recalled, because as easy as the internet is to use, the one thing they didn't add was a delete button.
But the first lot of our emails were actually trying to figure out times to meet and scheduling meetings.
Yes,
that was actually not the first of the emails.
Look, please join me in providing a wonderful warm thanks to our panellists for inspiring talk.